Hey everyone, Emily here and welcome to my kitchen. You might have noticed Jax in the background of pretty much all of my videos begging for whatever I'm making, so I figured I would finally make something that's just for him. I found a super easy recipe for 3-ingredient dog treats online. Perfect for the fall season. The main ingredient is going to be a pumpkin puree, and I think these are going to come out really good. At least I hope so. He's going to be the taste tester. So let's give this a try and get started. This is a super easy recipe. It only requires pumpkin puree, oats, and eggs, and I'm gonna get started with my oats. I'm gonna take this miniature food processor, you can also do this in a blender, and make my oat flour. I'm going to get started by measuring out 3 cups of rolled oats right into the food processor. And then I'm just going to pulse this until I have a somewhat fine flour. It's okay if there are a few chunks. It really doesn't take long, and this is about the texture that you're looking for. Still a couple of chunks in there, but mostly it's a pretty fine flour. Go ahead and add that into my mixing bowl. And now I'm going to get started on my pumpkin puree. Now the main ingredient, of course, is the pumpkin, and you could make this super easy on yourself and just use a can of pumpkin puree. I happened to have a pumpkin lying around from making pumpkin seeds, and so I figured I would use that. I just cut this pumpkin in half and then cut that half into quarters. And I roasted this in the oven at 350 degrees for about 45 minutes or until it started to get nice and soft. So after that, just let it cool. Now I'm gonna pop this right into my food processor. Super easy homemade pumpkin puree. I'll start off with about this much, it looks like 2 cups, and process this down and see how much I wind up with. This processed down so nice. I have a nice puree here, and I think that was just about enough. Looks like about the equivalent of 1 regular size can of pumpkin puree. So that should be just perfect. And if you are making yours at home, I think that just about 1/4 of a large pumpkin is going to do it. That's all I used out of this. I might still puree the rest of that pumpkin and then save it to add into his food sometimes. He really likes it as a little treat. From here, all that's left is to add in my 2 eggs. If you wanted to, you might be able to add in a little bit of peanut butter. I would just substitute that out for a little bit of the pumpkin. Or you could even add in maybe a can of chicken or something like that. But once you bake it, you'd probably have to keep it in the freezer just to be safe. From here, I'm just going to pop this right onto my stand mixer. And then I'll mix this until it forms a dough. It's gonna be a pretty thick dough according to the instructions. Now this is all nice and blended together, and I think it's looking like a really good consistency. So I'm gonna pop this off of my stand mixer and get started making my little dog biscuits. Now to get started making my biscuits, I did line a couple of baking sheets with some foil. I ran out of parchment paper, and I'm just gonna give that a quick spray of oil. I'm gonna take off my rings because this is going to get a little messy, and then I'm going to start forming these into little dog treats. So I'll just take a small amount of the dough, maybe enough to create a 1-inch circle, roll that up, and then I'll press it flat. Since these are homemade, you can make these treats as big or as small as you want to. So if you have a pretty little dog, you can make these into much smaller pieces, or you can do them super tiny and turn them into training treats if you like. So really easy to kind of customize this, but it might affect the baking time, so just keep that in mind. I have my first tray totally filled up, and I still have about half of the dough left. So I'm gonna get to work on my second tray and then pop these into the oven. These treats are ready to go into the oven, and because there's nothing in them that's really gonna cause them to expand much, you can just have them really close together on the baking sheet without worrying about them running into each other. I'm gonna bake these at 350 degrees for about 30 minutes, or until they start to lightly brown. They're not gonna brown too much in the oven, but you do wanna bake them enough that they start to become just a little bit on the crispier side. All right, my timer just went off, so I'm gonna take these out of the oven and see how they're looking. These are looking really good. They're lightly browned around the edges and they definitely feel very firm to the touch. So once these cool, they'll be nice and crispy. I'm gonna let these hang out on the counter for a few minutes just to cool off, and then I'm gonna get Jax and see what he thinks about these pumpkin treats. All right, these have had some time to cool off, so let's see what Jax thinks about them. He's gonna take it into the other room for a review. Well, these definitely seem to have gotten a positive review from Jax. I am going to pop about half of these into the freezer and store the rest of them in the refrigerator. They're not gonna be shelf stable like the treats you buy at the grocery store because there are some fresh ingredients in there. So just keep that in mind when you're making these at home. I think I'll definitely be making these again for Jax. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, don't forget to hit subscribe and the bell icon so you can get notified every time I post. As always, you can find the full recipe to this down in the description box below, along with links to all my social media pages so you can follow along for more cooking content. Hope to see you back here next time.